My fellow MMA fans, my fellow UFC enthusiasts, the day that we've been waiting for nearly 4 years now is finally coming to fruition. UFC Vegas 100, the biggest card in UFC history, is upon us right here, right now, Saturday, November 9th, 2024, the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is showtime. And who better to headline the biggest card in UFC history than the all-time leader in victories in the UFC welterweight division, the Haitian sensation, the 11-year veteran in the UFC, Mr. Neil Magny, and he is taking on an up-and-comer, a fast-rising prospect, a 2023 Dana White Contender Series alum, someone who is 3-0 with 3 knockouts in 2024, Mr. Carlos Prates, the Nightmare. All seriousness aside, all jokes aside, everything aside, I like this fight. These are the types of main events that I can get up for because we get the proven, seasoned veteran that is Neil Magny. Been there, done that, seen it all, done it all, beat the who's who, lost to the who's who, been a fight away from potential, number one contender bouts versus someone who is relatively unproven, but in their brief time in the organization has made eyeballs turn in his direction. Someone who is winning fights and winning them convincingly. Someone who is much younger and the newcomer into the promotion, getting his first main event spot, getting a huge step up, and getting an opportunity to face his first ranked opponent. Neil Magny, Carlos Prates, the welterweight division. Can Neil Magny hold his spot in the rankings, or Carlos Prates take that spot? There's only so much that I can truly say about Neil Magny than I already did in that introduction. Made his debut in the UFC way back in 2013. Started his UFC tenure 1-2 before tallying off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fights in a row. That took him into 2015. That is how long ago these win streaks have happened. He's fought literally the who's who of this division for nearly a decade at this point, having been in the cage with former champion Rafael dos Anjos, been in the cage with former title challenger Gilbert Burns, been in the cage with the next title challenger Shavkat Rakhmonov, and everything in between. Neil Magny is the all-time leader in wins in this division, and that is saying a lot considering the names that have been in the 170-pound division in the UFC's history, including one of, if not the greatest fighters in the history of the organization, George St. Pierre, including one of the longest tenured champions in this division's history, Kamaru Usman. The list truly does go on, and for that reason, I feel that Neil Magny is deserving of getting his flowers in this accolade that he has achieved over the course of his 10-year career, and he has not lost back-to-back fights in, I have to scroll quite a ways. As a matter of fact, hasn't lost back-to-back fights since that 2-fight skid when he started his career back in 2013. And I mentioned that he hasn't lost back-to-back fights in over a decade because he's coming off of a loss just a couple of months ago now in August, where he took on undefeated prospect Michael Morales. And not only did Michael Morales get a victory in that fight, he got a first-round finish over Neil Magny in that fight that catapulted him into the welterweight rankings. And there is a theme here with some of these losses for Neil Magny over the last 2 years. 3 of the 4 losses are to very fast rising prospects. I just talked about the undefeated Michael Morales. Prior to that, his loss was Ian Machado Gary in August of last year. That was a decision. He did lose to Gilbert Burns, which is someone that's a seasoned veteran, fought for the title, so on and so forth. But before that loss was to the undefeated Shavkat Rakhmonov, who again is next in line to challenge for the welterweight title. And that is an important theme to investigate here because, one, it shows that Neil Magny is quite literally willing to face anyone, no matter their status in this fight game. He is willing to give up-and-comers a chance to beat him and take his name away from them, and he has halted them away in the past as well. But the theme continues here because Carlos Prates, a Dana White Contender Series alum in 2023, 3-0 in 2024, all by finish, but no names as large as Mr. Neil Magny. Prates coming off of a knockout win over Li Jingliang in what was just 2 months ago back in August as well. However, Neil hasn't just lost to the young up-and-comers like I've just mentioned, he's also knocked off a young up-and-comer. Just see in January of 2024, where not only did he beat Mike Malott, a very fast-rising prospect out of Canada, he beat him in his home country of Canada. Oh, and by the way, he did it by way of finish in the third round of their fight. We've seen Mike Malott bounce back since then. As a matter of fact, he just did it this past weekend with a decision victory at UFC Edmonton. So now Neil Magny's focus changes toward that of Carlos Prates. The 31-year-old out of Brazil comes into this fight with a 20-6 record. 15 of those 20 victories that he has are by way of knockout. Add in 3 submissions, that marks him with an 18 victories via finish out of 20, and been finished in 5 of his 6 losses. Some would say that's the moniker of kill or be killed. Carlos Prates has not lost a fight since June 20th of 2019, over 5 years ago, and a matter of fact, that happened in 1 championship. He comes into this fight against Neil Magny riding a 10-fight win streak with 9 of them by way of finish. As I already mentioned, 3-0 in the UFC, all 3 of them in 2024. I know he's not in the category with Ilia Topuria and Alex Pereira as Fighter of the Year, but I think it's safe to say he is definitely the newcomer of the year, especially if he gets a victory here this weekend against Neil Magny. Neil Magny will come in with a 2-inch height and reach advantage. However, he is 6 years the elder of Prates in this bout, something to keep note of as Neil Magny continues to go through, maybe entering, I should say, the twilight of his career, given that he has been in the organization for such a long time now. But it's clear that he still does have the skill set and the capability to fend off opponents. Again, having not lost back-to-back fights in over a decade, reigns true to just how well-rounded that Neil Magny is, and that he can get victories against very name opponents. Can he do it here against someone that has a very, very high finishing rate, someone who is very, very dangerous? Because it is worth noting that in Neil Magny's 12 losses, he has been finished 9 times, but only 3 of them are by way of knockout, which of course is Carlos Prates' best path to victory with his dangerous power. I like this fight a lot, I really do. I think it is a fight that we will not see go the full 25 minutes, first and foremost. I think if Neil Magny wins here, he can get a finish in this fight, especially when you consider the fact that Carlos Prates has not really had to go the full distance in quite a long time. Rarely does he even leave the first round, and hasn't been to a third round since 2019 in December of that year. Will Neil Magny utilize that reach, his long, rangy arms and legs, to push Carlos Prates up against the fence, grapple him in the clinch, maybe even work for takedowns, or will Prates be able to keep the distance and pick apart Neil Magny with his shots before landing a potentially fight-ending powerful strike? I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this main event. I think it is deserving of the main event moniker, and of course to headline the biggest fight night card in UFC history. How about it? Neil Magny, Carlos Prates, the old guard versus the new wave. Who gets it done at UFC Vegas 100? Let me know in the comments below. And now I would like to touch on some other notable fights on this fight night card before we head on out of here. And I want to start by talking about 2 important fights in the women's strawweight division. And I say important because, well, we don't really know what's going on with the title picture right now at 115 pounds. We know that Zhang Weili is the champion. She defended her title back at UFC 300, but has not been booked to fight since, and I find that kind of strange, to be quite frank, especially with the UFC traveling to China in just a couple of weeks' time. So, yes, these aren't per se number 1 contender fights, but they are fights in the back half of the top 15 with notable names looking to make a charge in 2025. We start with 2 ladies on the outside looking in of the top 15. As a matter of fact, Karolina Kowalkiewicz was ranked before losing to Yasmin Lucindo at UFC 301 in May, But Karolina Kowalkiewicz is a former title challenger, had a great fight at UFC 205, back in November of 2016 against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Karolina, after that, did not have a great spell of things. Even at one point was on a 5-fight losing streak from September of 2018 to August of 2021. However, she was on a bit of a career resurgence prior to that loss earlier this year, having tallied off 4 straight victories from June of 2022 to October of 2023. And although she is in the back half of her career at 39 years old, I do still think she has something to offer against these younger up-and-comers in this division, and that is who she's facing this weekend. Back-to-back young up-and-comers now. This week, Denise Gomes. Gomes is 9-3 and just 24 years old, 3-2 in the UFC, but I will say in her biggest challenge against the biggest name, she did falter. That was against Angela Hill in November of 2023, where she did lose a decision. She has since bounced back by winning a decision earlier this summer in June, but will she be able to kind of make it 2 in a row? Will she be able to beat someone with a big name in this division, such as Karolina Kowalkiewicz? Or will Karolina be able to right the ship and make it 5 of her last 6 fights green and in the win column? And more importantly and more intriguing of the 2 strawweight matchups is this one here between the number 13 ranked Luana Pinheiro and the number 14 ranked newly added fighter to the strawweight division, Jillian Roberson. The 2020 Dana White Contender Series alum Luana Pinheiro started her UFC career 3-0, including a victory over Michelle Waterson-Gomez, a longtime staple in the top 10 of this division, but has since lost back-to-back fights, both of them by way of finish. In November of last year, she got finished late in the fight via spinning wheel kick to Amanda Hebos, and in this year's May of 2024 to be exact, lost via finish to Angela Hill, the first time that Angela Hill had gotten a finish in the UFC in years. Meanwhile, Jillian Roberson has gone 3-1 since entering the 115-pound division, coming down from the flyweight division, and the only loss is to ranked opponent Tabitha Ricci over the course of a 15-minute decision. She has wins over Poliana Viana via finish and a dominant one-sided decision victory over Michelle Waterson-Gomez back in June, which turned out to be Michelle Waterson-Gomez's final fight of her career. And at still 29 years old, Jillian Roberson already holds records in the UFC for most submission wins in women's history, and I think maybe even most finishes. You may have to fact check me there, but she has been in the UFC for so long, but still is only 29, about to enter her prime. And yeah, a 14-8 record doesn't look all that great, but she has fought really a who's who of 2 different weight classes essentially over the course of her now 6-year career in the UFC. I really do feel that Jillian does belong at 115 pounds just for her, her frame, her body. I think she fits well into the strawweight division. I do think Luana Pinheiro will look a little bit more built, physically strong in this matchup here, but I don't think that will be too much of a disadvantage for Jillian Roberson. Just when you take into account her amazing jiu-jitsu skills and grappling, that could be the big difference here against someone in Pinheiro who is coming off of a submission loss. We've got GM3 Gerald Meerschaert coming into this on a 2-fight win streak, both of them by way of finish, both of them in the second round, and of course, both of them via submission. I mean, let's be honest here. He has 37 victories in his professional career. 29 of them are by way of submission. As a matter of fact, in August, when he submitted Edmund Shabazian, I'm pretty sure he is now the lone holder of the most submissions in middleweight history, maybe even the most finishes in middleweight history in the UFC. So we have some UFC record holders here on this UFC Vegas 100 card. Again, just proves the point of how it is the greatest fight night in UFC history. But seriously, 36-year-old Gerald Meerschaert seems to have no signs of slowing down just yet. 54 professional fights, looking to enter into his 55th this weekend, but it is against Rene de Ridder. For UFC fans, maybe you haven't heard of him quite yet, but he is a phenom, a longtime title holder in one championship, 34 years old, 17-2, and a submission ace. 11 of his 17 victories, as a matter of fact, are by way of submission, but does have 4 knockouts as well, making it 15 out of 17 by way of stoppage and been finished in both of his losses. This fight surely will not go the full 15 minutes, and as I said earlier, a former multi-weight world champion in one championship. However, he's lost 2 of his last 3 bouts, both of them to the same man in Anatoly Malkian. That was in March of this year via TKO and in December of 2022 via TKO. However, Rene did fight in UAE Warriors, which I did not know. That happened in July of this year, and he got a TKO victory in the first round. This is a big opportunity here for Rene de Ridder to make a splash in his first UFC bout. It kind of gives me similar vibes to someone with the name of Alex Pereira. He's doing it around the same age, and he's doing it in the same exact weight class. Alex Pereira debuted on the prelims of a pay-per-view card, got a knockout, and was fast-tracked to superstardom. Now, the face of the UFC, Rene de Ridder, maybe not as accredited in kickboxing like Alex Pereira, but definitely more accredited in the world of mixed martial arts, being a former multi-weight world champion and one of the most prominent organizations in the world for mixed martial arts. If he comes in here, gets a victory over the veteran that is Gerald Meerschaert, he will be catapulted into the top 15 and have an opportunity to tally together 3-4 wins before he is in legitimate title discussions. So let me know in the comments below, what fights are you looking forward to the most throughout the remainder of this card? Is it the pair of fights in the 115-pound division with top 15 implications? Is it the debut in the UFC for Rene de Ridder? Or is there another diamond in the rough on the remainder of this card that you are excited to see? Give me all of your thoughts, your predictions, and your bets in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Every week I will break down and preview the biggest fights, the best storylines, and what is at stake heading into each fight night card. I recap the most meaningful results from every card, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. Be sure to join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can follow along on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes release. Have a great weekend, enjoy the fights, and I will see you in the next video.